Hello and welcome to another episode of FinTech Focus TV with me, Toby Babb. Today I'm absolutely delighted to be reunited with two people that I was on stage with at FinTech Fringe just, a couple of weeks ago now, a week or two ago. We had a great conversation about the sort of challenges of AI and hiring in the space. Neal, Cyrus, listen, lovely to have you back on. Thanks for coming into the studio to rerun the fun. So we were talking about this sort of great AI hiring race, the talent race, the war for talent in this sort of space, whichever way you want to put it through. I love the conversation. I love what we were talking about. You guys have both come through with brilliant businesses. You've been able to attract and engage and retain some of the best talent in the industry. No mean feat when everyone's looking at this foot race in the last couple of years for the best in the space. So we're going to dive into that, find out a little bit what's happening in your businesses in the market as a whole, how you differentiate, how you've done well so far in that thing, how you plan to do it as things can move forward as well. So lots to dive into. But let's start off with some introductions. Neal, kick us off. Tell us a little bit about yourself and the business.
I'm Neal. I'm CTO co-founder at Grading Labs. Grading Labs has built an AI agent for financial services where we automate their customer support.
Fantastic. Cyrus.
I'm Cyrus. I look at engineering at Tunic Pay. We're a startup based in London and we solve scams, payment scams.
Fantastic. I was at the Financial Crime 360 event yesterday and payment scams is all the rage. I mean, it literally blew my mind as I was hearing everything that's happening.
That's a problem, huge scale, yeah.
But what I love about it is there's people like you guys doing something about it and fighting the good fight. So it feels really purpose-led and a really interesting place for people to sort of come into. That's a whole nother story, a whole other show. So let's reframe this back into it and start off with the whole concept. So you give us a little bit of background. So you both AI native businesses, both in that sort of growth phase of the company at the moment, both seeing the businesses develop and move further forward. Tell us about the sort of size, scale, speed of growth, etc., and how you've managed to attain that.
So Grading Labs is 2.5 years old now. All three of us co-founders were working together very closely at Monzo Bank, and we left shortly after the advent of GPT-4. I think that was just showing the world what the opportunity is that lies ahead here. And
that was the piece for you. That was the go moment.
Well, we had been working in the operational and financial crime space at Monzo for several years, so we've seen how hard it is inside of banks to automate these processes and these different customer journeys. And we started tinkering, and we were actually in different parts of the business at that time, and then met over lunch, and we decided that this was a problem worth solving for the world, and started the company off of there. So by early December, we'll be about 30 people, split across engineering, AI, what we call AI delivery, and then more of your classic functions like sales and marketing.
And spread across the globe as well.
Yes. We've just launched in the US. We were originally focused on the UK, where so many of our friends and partners are here, but very quickly started selling our AI agent to anyone who would want to give it a spin. And usually what we've seen is that there's a lot of great appetite to try out AI solutions these days, but really the crux of it is seeing how good it performs. And so, we're capitalizing on that appetite to try things out and show everyone how good our AI agent is.
Absolutely. You're nodding there. It sounds a familiar story, right?
I think quite a familiar growth story for us. We're just under 2 years old, Tunic Pay, about 20-something people now, again, spread across AI, engineering, data science, more of the business sales functions. We are largely focused on the UK at the moment, but looking at expansion to other markets starting next year as well. Our team's all based in the UK for now.
And remote or in office?
We're a hybrid office. We have an office in Farringdon, just down the road, and so we're in there 3 days a week as a whole team, jamming together. I think, I personally have always struggled with remote transitions. I think I found the kind of post-COVID remote focus to be challenging for business development, for team growth, for culture setting, and I think we find that FaceTime really valuable to digest customer feedback, to make sure we're building the right things, focusing on the right places, and
best of both in that sort of, yeah, absolutely. I think that's been an interesting metamorphosis over the last couple of years, and about how people sort of work on that transition, and you know, from the people there who are saying, right, everyone's back in, through to the ones who've always been at that sort of end of the spectrum, through to this totally remote piece. And I think there are people who've done really well with totally remote, but I think, you know, like you, I'm a big advocate for having people, you know, the ability to get people together and to brainstorm and do all that sort of stuff. So I want to talk about that sort of thing. So both of you have scaled relatively quickly in this sort of space, in a challenging market for talent, as we say. Neal, I know when you spoke, you mentioned there about the sort of group of you sat around a table, having a lunch and discussing, right, let's go for it. I also know there's been a sort of, you know, a network of sort of, you know, trusted lieutenants and people who you've worked with in the past that sort of come through and joined you on the pilgrimage. Yeah. Tell us how that's sort of gone, because it's always that same sort of story, isn't it? You have that bit where it's people you know, and then it starts to spread out a little bit more. Tell us how that's sort of gone, because, you know, 30 of them won't be 30 ex-Monzo people. Right?
Yeah, that's true. There's much less than that. Actually, so, yeah, we were very, very lucky that when we started the company, many of our former colleagues asked to join us for the ride. And we actually had to turn away more than I'm happy with, but it's just because we didn't want to just be a subset of ex-Monzo. We also hired another ex-Monzo startup. They had actually closed their business, and we hired several of their engineers. They were called Cordless, and they'd worked in telephony and AI as well, and so very relevant for everything that we're doing, and very, very, very strong engineers. Some of them are in Europe, and over time, obviously, you can't just rely on your network. The second order thing you rely on is referrals, and so referrals from your network. We've experimented loads there. We put out a 10K bonus for a successful referral. That's how we found our first data hire. And then, yeah, we've experimented with everything. Internships, which is, you know, hiring more junior candidates for 3 months at a time to see whether it can work out on longer term for them, all the way through to the more classic partnering with recruitment firms for some roles. And yeah, now we have a good mix of people with various backgrounds, different companies, and all of them, I guess the key thing that we're looking for is strong empathy for the problem that we're trying to solve, and a passion for the opportunity that lies ahead with AI. So it's one of the things that we do look at quite closely when we're interviewing people is how do they feel about this opportunity that AI presents to us, and are they as excited to roll up their sleeves and make it work for our customers, and perhaps you could argue drinking the Kool-Aid a little bit, but ultimately the way it looks inside of an AI native company is that it's not just that we're building an AI product, but we're also using AI products ourselves throughout the software development cycle, all the way through to marketing. And so the way I've been framing it, this is the way I talked about it at the Fringe, was that although there's a subset of folks inside of the company who are working on AI, they might be doing the prompt engineering, they might be evaluating classifiers, doing the science flavored work. Everybody inside the company is working in AI, building an AI native company, building an AI product, and working and partnering with other companies who effectively are trying to supercharge their own AI agenda. So really, that's where we look for that relentless passion for this technology as well.
I think that relentless passion is a really interesting piece, and coming back to what I was saying at the very offset about the event yesterday, when you convert, putting purpose and passion together, you get a really powerful sort of mix, and I think that's an important magnet for talent in this sort of space, isn't it? You're looking at something there that becomes pretty compelling. So if you talk about EVPs, employee value propositions and such like, and making sure that talent where you see a lot of headlines about jobs and where the market is, but I know that anyone with a decent knowledge of AI isn't going to be short of opportunity. They're going to have multiple offers on the table. We'll speak about this a little bit later on as well, but there's multiple big offers on the table, giving ridiculous offers for competitive talent. Tell us about, Cyrus, how you're making sure that you are not only attractive but able to be a standout employer. I always love that question of saying, right, if a candidate who you've offered a job to has 2 or 3 competing offers, why are they going to choose your business?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I guess there are kind of a few ways to slice what the value proposition looks like for people, and the uncomfortable reality of being in an early stage business with less resource, with less capital resource behind you, is that you can't afford to be salary competitive with more established businesses. That's true whether we're talking about fan companies or whether we're talking about traditional finance companies or anyone else who's better resourced than a startup would be. And I guess coming to Neal's point, I think that really accentuates looking for people who are passionate about the problem that we're trying to solve, who feel that in our case scams are a significant and growing problem, and that they want to address that problem, and who are passionate about working with the kinds of organisations. I mean, in our case, we're working with numerous banks around the UK. We're serving millions of customers around the UK as a result, and so the ability to impact a significant problem at a significant scale is a really it's a very particular opportunity. I think when you pair that with the kind of ownership of approach that comes at early stage, I think that's a tremendously exciting value proposition for people. It doesn't work for everyone. I mean, you can't find a proposition that's going to work for people who are more financially motivated, because ultimately cash compensation isn't going to match what they'll find at more established business. But you can find propositions which are really which really speak to the values that people hold, and that's, I think, where we really try to kind of accentuate when we look at the hiring process. I think what retention looks like for us is really very similar. I think we create an environment that people want to remain in by giving them real ownership of the way that they approach dealing with that problem, and a real proximity to seeing the impact of that problem play out, or their solution play out on the problem with the customers. And yeah, I think that leads to both very good outcomes in terms of what we're building and how we address the problem, and also in terms of people's sense of buy-in. And then of course equity is, maybe
helps.
Hopefully
it always helps.
Yeah.
I'm really interested in that last point there about the sort of retention piece, because I think it's under thought of sometimes. We're in a space, as I spoke about in the conversation before the Fringe, that we're in a space where engineers have average tenure of less than 18 months. That's a lot of churn when you're talking about where we're looking at. And I think people pay attention to attraction more so than ever, which is great. But I think the retention piece is a really important part of it. Now, we've done a sort of an awards for the last 8 years or so, where we've talked about the top 1% of employers within this space. A lot of them is, and every single year that sort of morphs a little bit into what's important for people, what's important for AI talent, tech talent, should I say, as a general rule. And I think people have gone through from the various different phases from we're here and we take them all off for off-sites and we look after people and we've got fun stuff in the office and gimmicks, through to we're doing a lot of education and lunch and learn and all this sort of stuff, through to it's all about communication, through to when people start to come back in, we give flexibility and all that sort of thing. There's been various themes every single year. This year for me, the overwhelming sensation I got is that we're giving people opportunities to solve really complex problems. We're allowing them to get their hands dirty. I think the luxury of the old Google 20% time feels a very old hat now. 20% time is expected, but what are you actually doing to give an impact into the business? You heard what Cyrus says there, Neal. Is that a similar sort of thing there to how you're retaining your best people?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, thinking back to the companies that I worked at in the past, the way that they would think about retention generally is very, very different from the way I think about it now at a very small startup. So like you said, in a larger company, you think about retention by having a career path and a progression framework and opportunities to get promoted and then get your extra benefits and these perks here and there. And broadly, I suppose it distills down into giving someone like some vision of where they could step towards and some comfort along that journey. And the trade-off there is that then, and this is exactly what I dive into people when I'm hiring them, is I ask them what their actual day-to-day looks like. And so in practice, in a large tech company, you'll be in a team. You'll maybe have your stand-up with your team. You'll have your retro every 2 weeks or whenever. You'll be participating in one team and a backlog and a goal, and then you'll be thinking about progressing within the company by achieving the impact that you want to achieve. And what I say to people is just let's imagine that we remove all of that, right? So for the next couple of years, we are actually going to just be thinking about building. We're not going to have teams. And we're at 30 people. We still haven't split the company into small units or any kind of structure. It's what is the biggest thing the company wants to work on right now, and let's huddle most people around it. And if there's some other small important problems to work on, then we'll assemble 2-3 people to get it done. So it's the fluidity of the structure. You can eventually work with everybody inside the company. You can know them all on a first name basis, and you're not going to be stuck in one team having to make your case for your next promotion, because at the end of the day, majority of the stuff in an early stage startup hasn't yet been built. And so the opportunity to just put your hand up and say, hey, I want to work on that problem because it looks important. All I have to do is say yes, and then they're off to the races. So the actual day-to-day of an engineer at Gradient Labs looks very different to what it did like wherever they came from, because I sort of promised them an empty calendar to the best effort that I can. Maybe they'll have right now one all hands a week, maybe a couple other meetings here and there, but it's fully their choice, and plenty of time to build, plenty of time to get deep into all parts of the business and eventually touch all the different problems that we're working on, and use all the AI tools that they want along the way, right? Yeah. Which right now, I suppose, is an important part to think about, because even engineers themselves are seeing how their own discipline, their own craft is being shaped by AI. And you know, as CTO, I just want to feel that enthusiasm, because it just helps them to be excited about what they're doing. And there's nothing better than an engineer who's really engaged in the problem that they're solving, and having like a sort of joyful experience of solving it by using tools that they love.
And that's compelling, isn't it? Because I imagine that every single one of your team in both companies will be able to go out tomorrow and get a significant pay increase without question. They could go into it, almost any of them, if they've got the quality to work for both of your businesses, from what I know of them, they're going to go out there and be able to work for some of the biggest companies in the world and be able to walk into some positions in those spaces. So it does become that incredibly compelling. It does. Well, it must be also incredibly affirming to know that you're getting that sort of thing right, and you're able to get the people what they want. And I think so much of it is, as you both said there, is about A, having the right people who are passionate about the problem, but B, then also really working them into the solution of what they're doing, giving them purpose around it.
I think there's like one extra dimension there. I heard one of our engineers speaking to a candidate, and she said that it's also that it's a very specific moment in time right now for this technology. And so it's not going to be like this forever. It's not that it's all going to go to bust or burst any bubble, but it's the early days of bringing AI agents to life, and being in an environment that is fully focused on doing that and bringing it from like a 0 to 1 and 1 to 100 is a very unique setting that is going to be actually quite difficult to find, right? Because the more established companies, you wouldn't be working on the full suite of an AI agent from all angles. You might be participating in one little bit of a build, but the sort of autonomy layered in with the fact that 2025 was called the year of agents, and I'm sure this is going to last for a decade and beyond in terms of the
decade of agents all of a sudden, isn't it?
So I think that's an extra thing to factor in. Like you said, our engineers could very easily go elsewhere and probably get a better paycheck, but they would be probably giving up working on the bleeding edge, working in an environment that is so flexible and lacking in informal structures, and maybe some of their AI tools would be taken away from them. And so yeah, ultimately, I think it's a very special time to be working in an early stage company.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, you're nodding.
I've had very, very similar conversations with candidates as well, and I think I guess I might sort of take it one step further actually, which is to say, I think at the application layer, companies like ours are placed to define what that layer looks like in a way that incumbent companies are not, because the business driver for a FANG company operating the application layer right now isn't to try to shape how this technology can unlock new value or solve problems in novel ways. It's to try to apply this to their existing value proposition. And I think that leads to a situation where if you're passionate about business problems and you're passionate about what this technology can do to unlock them, then really you don't necessarily want to explore that within the confines of a very established business model. You want to explore that either here, or you want to explore that technology much more at the foundation layer, which obviously will be done by companies that have much greater resource for the time being.
Yeah, totally understand. I think as you're talking, I'm also thinking about another area there where this isn't the most easy. This isn't the easiest place to hire insofar even just down to profiling who you're looking for, because a great AI engineer comes in many shapes and sizes. You know, when you're looking at a classic software engineer, it's have they done this, have they done that, and you know, kind of mirror match sort of players is what you're looking for. It's a jigsaw puzzle. Right here in this space, some of the best people, you know, haven't had 20 years worth of experience. They can say this is what we've done. In fact, it can be some people who've got the most limited amounts of experience, who've got the most potential within it all. So it makes this really interesting sort of conundrum that I haven't seen in 25 years of recruiting in the space of what actually good looks like. And when you're actually thinking about here's a mirror match sort of play of what makes an ideal candidate for somewhere, it becomes a lot more cerebral and it becomes a lot more actually intuitive about who and what looks good and who fits what company. So if you're to sit there and say, obviously there's a certain element of requisite skills that are needed in a place, but if you're sat there and say, look, we're hiring for a bunch of skills here that are distinctly different from just a technological, I've had experience in X, Y, and Z, what does good actually look like?
Yeah, I have a slightly different view from that, I think. I think that, I mean, I agree with a lot of what you said. AI engineering is like, it's like pre-industrial in its nascency. It doesn't exist yet. We don't know what form it will take. We don't know what it will mean in future. It's just far too early to say. And certainly, as you say, the best candidates we find will not have decades of experience here. And that, in a sense, can feel quite different from hiring for more established engineering practices. But I guess my experience throughout my career has been in building teams of engineers, not teams of front-end specialists or mobile specialists or site reliability specialists or back-end specialists. I think engineering as a craft is the process of understanding how to drive business value from building things and how to operate those things at scale. And AI engineering is no different from that. And certainly in the sense in which I think a company like ours looks for an AI engineer, it's no different from that. The reason that we hire for AI engineers is that what we're interested in advertising is that people will get the opportunity to deploy this new technology against an existing business problem in a novel way. And that means understanding the way that LLMs can be helpful. It means understanding the way that generative AI can be helpful, and also understanding the way that other traditional software engineering practices can be helpful, and non-probabilistic software can be helpful as well. And nothing is different in the AI engineering ecosystem about that process versus in traditional software engineering. I think for us, that's about identifying what competencies teams need, what competencies our company needs to be successful, what competencies are valuable in our team members in order to be able to drive this business to be successful. And a lot of that is about ability to use an LLM to solve a problem, but not all of it. And so I don't think this is that different from hiring engineers elsewhere.
Do you know what? I think that I'm really pleased you said that, because I think a lot about the confidence of an employer. And actually, you know, you're talking from a sort of co-founding sort of position on that side of things. I think there's a lot of people who sit there and hire through fear of getting it wrong, fear of saying, look, what you can't say that I got it wrong, because look at the CV and look at how it matches what we're looking for. And actually, you're looking a lot more intuitively than that. And I think that's a really important part of it that I haven't actually really thought about too much about. You know, when you're talking about competencies and you're talking about those sort of areas, that is the way to be looking at these sort of things. You can build the rest of it into it. I think part of the issue about 18-month tenures and less for software engineers is because people are hiring for a piece of paper that they need to do. When you're an engineer and you're doing something there that's a job that you can already do, you're kind of bored before you started. And it's always got to be about that sort of growth pattern as to how people are moving into it. And
yeah, I think it's true for, I guess, in the wider technology industry, there's always a new job title every few years, right? At one point, data scientist was the new job title, and then ML engineer, and then analytics engineer, and so every few years there's something new that comes up. And when you're in that period when it's, well, arguably this still happens for data science as well, that just the fact that someone has data scientist on their CV, it could mean a world apart from what you're looking for, because the way that company does data science is nothing like what you expected and how you expect it to be done. So with AI engineer in particular, it's super early. And I don't think, nobody has like built a decade-long career in this space. A lot of it is people who have worked in engineering or in machine learning or in data science, and they're gravitating towards this revolution that's happening. And so job titles are changing, but the one thing that persists across all of it, this is what we really anchor on in our interview process, is what are they excited about doing? Yeah. And so yes, as you said, there are some technical bars that they need to meet, and usually those are assessed with a small technical task. But fundamentally, no matter what you're hiring for, in technology, you want people who are excited when the technology comes to life. And that's one of the sort of things that we look for. We're interviewing people with real problems that we have solved already, and looking at how excited they are to be solving those flavors of problems. And also what sort of excitement they get from it. So like, for example, we abandoned our old systems design interview because it was just way too technical and not the sort of thing that really gave us meaningful signal at an early stage startup. We replaced it with a more product design interview for engineers, because it's like, here's a real customer problem, and how would you go about reasoning through the different pieces, and then yes, how would you build it as well. But yeah, it's sort of one of the things that we index on really heavily, is people being excited when the technology is making a meaningful difference, as opposed to being excited about the small technical details of getting it there.
I think that tech test has been an absolute killer for so many careers and companies in their ability to get the best talent in there. When you've got a black and white piece of paper and saying this is the pass and fail, this is how we want to do it, you see people go into interviews who could easily be the best person for that job, but are ruled out because they've made a mistake on something that they would have done in their day, like overnight. Yeah. For mental, I think it's so naive to look at things like that, and I'm really pleased that people are starting to think a little bit differently about how they can move that into it and make better decisions around who they bring into it. And I want to touch on that, because I did an interview a few weeks ago with a friend of mine out in Asia, and he's building a business around the whole deepfake space at the moment, which is another fascinating area. And he was talking about the sort of ability to bring that into actually the recruitment arena as well, because he sees it as, and we've just started to see the first few examples of where people have gone through interview process and fallen at the last hurdle, when it's been quite clear that it hasn't been them in the process up until that final stage, where they've been doing the online pieces up until that sort of area. So just as a sort of general thing, is that something you're in the heart of that sort of area? Is it something that comes across your radar, as whether people are faking it until they're making it in that sort of space? Have you seen examples of that yet?
Well, we encourage people to use AI in their take-home task, and we just say, please tell us which AI you used. Yeah. And then we're not passing or failing them just on the submission of this take-home task. We then talk to them for 45 minutes about it, and for a reasonable candidate, you'd assume that they're not just shutting their eyes and telling, whichever language model they like to do their homework for them, but that they're using it to do it better, right? And that they had then taken the time to understand whether it's been done well or not, and so they can still have a conversation about it. And so we haven't run into a deepfake candidate just yet. I don't think so, at least. But yeah, I definitely early on, we saw a lot of CV applications and covering letters that were definitely AI generated. So maybe the problem for us was manifesting more at the top of the funnel, and sort of filtering out which candidates we want to speak to, because there was so much AI generated content there. And so we amended our job ads to say, if you're using AI, just please let us know. And that really helped us as well.
Yeah, I guess it's an interesting point, isn't it? When you're talking about people who are the AI native, that you want them to chastise them for not utilising, but just being honest about how, what way you are using it and how it comes to life as well.
Yeah.
So, if we're to sort of round things up, so up and over on the hiring piece, because I want to go on to the industry just to finish things up in a second. If we're to do that and say, right, if you're there and you are looking to mimic the sort of scale that you guys have been able to enjoy over the last things, and give a couple of key takeaways as how you are attracting, engaging, retaining the best AI talent in this space, what would you say some of your core takeaways, and could pass over to people?
I think for me it would be hire engineers. I think it would be embrace and build AI throughout the process. And I think it would be, in our case, to further Neal's point, we give people API keys and then we monitor their usage for take-home tests to make sure that they're using them. Yeah. So embrace AI adoption throughout the process, and also really design a process that is intending to hire the kinds of people that you want to bring into your team and the kinds of people that you want to drive value for your business. And for us at early stage companies, that really looks like finding strong problem alignment, strong design to push good customer outcomes, strong design to sit with the customer and see good delivery happen. That's how we incentivize. That doesn't look the same for every business, but I think those learnings are all a reflection of that kind of meta question, which is really, how is this person actually going to benefit this company when they join, and what's going to make them feel happy about the fact that they're doing that? And so I think build everything from that starting point.
Yeah, absolutely. I always feel difficult when you pass that question over to the second person.
Yeah,
what he said.
Yeah, what he said. Well, it's very difficult for us to find things we disagree about. Yeah. So Tunic Pay and Gradient Labs.
One of those punch-ups on the stage.
We'll need to. Yeah, we were working on it.
Yeah, came off of that.
So +1 for everything. The only thing I'd add, I suppose, is that each hire that you make is going to set the bar for the one that comes after it, and so. There's a compounding effect here. In the London tech scene, everyone's a couple hops away from each other anyway. In the wider UK tech scene, that's also true. So every hire that you make will be telling their friends and their ex-colleagues about where they've landed, and so there's a snowball effect that can happen here. And I think that's just important when you're thinking about hiring, because you're shaping the team, not just each individual that you add to it.
I read a book during lockdown. I read one on each company, so forgive me if I can't remember which one it was, but it was either Netflix or Amazon, and both of them had a similar sort of conversation about talent density. But I love the whole concept of, does this hire raise the average? And so eventually it got this compounding effect that you spoke about, where it becomes more and more difficult to actually be someone of value in that business, because you have people who've been there 3-4 years who are saying, I've never got a job at this company at that sort of stage, because a hire does say a lot about that you're bringing into the business. And as you say, in terms of that ripple effect, and other people are saying that's a journey I've got to be a part of. If you're getting people there, and it was a big part actually of that top 1% workplace awards I was telling you about, is people wanted to join companies there where they were looking left and right and seeing people and seeing talent around them, and that becomes to become a magnet for talent. I think is incredibly important, no more so than the space that we're talking about here. So let's wrap up. We're filming this in November. This will come out at the start of the year. We've seen a enormous growth. We talked about the year of the agent in 2025, etc., and enormous development in the space over this year. Crystal balls out from both of you to finish up. If we're going to say what's exciting for 2026, what we expect to see in this space, tell us what we can expect. Tell us what's happening.
You can go first this time.
I'll go first. Okay. Wow. Okay. I guess I'm not the first person to say that all progress in foundational language models could halt, and the opportunity to develop at the application layer would remain for a decade plus to come. So, but we know that that's not true. Progress in the foundation models is just going to carry on as well. So this is a hugely exciting space, and at Gradient Labs, so we've, I mentioned at the start, we partner with a lot of companies, financial services in the UK and abroad. We're launching in the US, so it's sort of expanding globally and finding how we need to change and modify our AI agent to suit every corner of the world. We're already live in multiple languages and multimodal. We have our telephony layer coming out, and many, many more things to build. But really, what we are seeing is that now, if I think back to majority of my career in machine learning, a huge part of my role was always to try and convince a business to consider the technology at all. And I would be, say, with a small ML team hunting around the business for problems that matched what the technology can provide. But that has completely turned on its head. And now
Isn't that fascinating?
yeah, I mean, it's like, finally. But the pull for this technology is now coming at the board level and beyond, right? So at the same time, every company now, all of their frontline engineers and people who are hands-on are all enthusiastic about AI as well. So whichever way next year and beyond goes, I don't think AI is going away anytime soon. I think what's going to happen, though, is that we're going to be able, over the next couple of years, to split out the companies that are really delivering value to their partners from those that are sort of just making claims that they can't later substantiate by actually deploying their things live and showing that it makes a difference. So that's where the main race is, and it's really exciting because fundamentally it means that when you're building an AI, a lot of times companies are not just considering you, but they're considering someone else. So there's a bit of competition as well that always excites me, and beating the competition is always a morale booster for the team, and just keeps it keeps us honest, it keeps us ambitious, and it's like, I don't know, playing in some sort of World Cup of AI, right, where you move on, you win your game, and then you immediately put your mind into the next one. So what's 2026 like looking for you?
I mean, I guess plus one to all of that. But I guess what I would add, a couple of things. I think one thing is that I think as we see this kind of process through 26 and maybe a little beyond of foundation models continuing to mature and of the application layer continuing to mature, I think these bake-offs will become really material, and by that I mean the kinds of bake-offs that we participated in the application layer. I think these bake-offs will become real, and I think that there will be a lot of change in the kinds of players that operate at that level. I think that we're at an interesting point at the moment for many of our customers who struggle to really deliver a value from the adoption of AI through to their customers. Large enterprises, the reality is that AI use cases haven't permeated the business in the way that I think many at the board level would want at this stage, if they haven't necessarily shown the return on investment at the rate that I think the board level would want at this stage. And so I think that kind of ongoing tension is coming to a head, and I think that will happen over the next few months. I guess the other thing I'd add, though, from a technology point of view, is I think that we're starting to see, as the foundation layers kind of mature around language models, I think we're starting to see a kind of specialization of models, which I think will be very, very interesting, and I think will unlock a kind of compounding second order set of use cases with much better efficiency and much better scale potential. So I'm very excited about VLMs. I'm very excited about the possibility of kind of deploying transform architectures against different other tokenized data sets that aren't necessarily just language based, and so on and so forth. And
Nice.
I mean, whatever we say on it, it's definitely going to be an exciting year again, isn't it, for the sector? Loads of growth. And if I add something to that, I don't think it's going to get any easier to hire AI talent. I think it's going to become more and more competitive. And I think there's going to be more and more panic around that race, and more people resolving to saying, right, I'm just going to throw money at it. As we've heard today, that isn't necessarily the answer. In fact, I'll probably argue that it definitely isn't the answer for a long-term sustainability. I love the fact of how you're going about this, how you're thinking about it, what it means. It's why I wanted to bring you both back onto the show to come and talk about what we spoke about on stage last week. And I love the fact you've done it. So thank you very much. Really enjoyed it.
Thanks.
Thanks for joining
Thanks for
us.
having us.
And thank you all for watching. We will see you soon on the next episode of FinTech Focus TV. Thanks a lot.